so tender, it's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet, I bow down at your feet, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul, forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul, forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire is to love and adore you with all of my heart, with all of my soul, forever. Lord, I fall at your altar in sweet surrender, and I've never known mercy so tender. It's healing my heart, it's healing my soul forever. I bow down at your feet. I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. I bow down at
Word to Timothy.
I bow down at your feet. Bow down and worship you, Jesus, my Savior, my King. Lord, I stand in your presence, broken before you, and my heart's desire.
Assembly. I mean, there's problems there. And so Paul's been encouraging Timothy in this letter, and I hope that it's one that's helped us and encouraged us and informed us. And so, his last exhortation is interesting because he's going to speak to those who are wealthy, materially wealthy. Ephesus was an affluent area. It was the ruins of the city now are not on the coast, but they were at one point. The geography and they had a harbor that has been now no longer, but nonetheless, they were right there on the coast. They were commercial, they were a trading center. They had the great temple to Diana, Artemis. They were a tourist attraction. It was a wealthy area. And so it doesn't surprise us that Paul has some words for those who are Christians who are blessed materially. And so, and I think we can all find application from this, whether you say, well, I don't think I'm wealthy. I don't think I have a lot. I'm not rich. But I think we all are and can make in one way or another, even materially, And certainly when we look at other people around the world with money and our finances, that we are still very, very blessed here. So there's a lot here we can get out of this. Let's go ahead and get that clicker. Someone read 17 through 19, 1 Timothy 6. Okay, Marcia?
Give this command to those who are rich with the things of this world. Tell them not to be proud. Tell them to hope in God, not their money. Money cannot be trusted, but God takes care of us richly. He gives us everything to enjoy. Tell those who are rich to do good, to be rich in good works, and tell them they should be happy to give and ready to share. By doing this, they will be saving up a treasure for themselves, and that treasure will be a strong foundation on which their future life will be built. They will be able to have the life that is true life.
All right, now we already saw earlier in the chapter, Paul, down in verse 6 and following, and we talked about those false teachers are actually profiting from the gospel. And Paul says, no, that's not how it is. It's godliness with contentment is what is profitable. And so he talked about that, and he talked about that the love of the church is God, not money. And that the love of money is a root of all evil. And of course, many have plunged into ruin and destruction and all kinds of evil in their desire to obtain it. And so money is not the problem. Money is not the sin. It's that desire, that greedy desire for more. And the love of money, the love of God is what we love, not money and possessions. And so he gave that charge earlier. Now he kind of swings back around to it. And he's going to use a couple of phrases here. And we're going to kind of use this as a little bit of a structure. He'll use a couple of key phrases here. And certainly with this centers around money and wealth and getting things out of priority and everything. And he starts here by saying, command those who are rich in this present world or present age. You would also find that in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 10, because he loved this world. And then in Titus 2 and verse 12, using similar language, say no to ungodliness and worldly possessions, and upright, and to live godly lives in this present age. And so he comes back to this idea of the present age, especially in the context of command those who are rich. Why would he qualify it in this present age? Why do you think why think that's important for them to remember? You're rich in this present age.
Because those riches aren't going to last, and they don't really mean anything.
Yeah. He's talked about previously what? That you brought nothing.
Into this world,
You'll take nothing out. Yeah. And so again, there's nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with riches. There's nothing wrong with money. It is not evil. It is neutral, if you will. It's what we do with it. It's what's in our heart. And so he says here, this is what you need to remember. Command those who are rich in this present world. And he says, here's how you need to approach your wealth, your riches. It all has a temporary time, and he says the key here is not to be. Mine says what? Arrogant or haughty. It's a word that also has to do with. It's a word we don't use much. To disdain. What's haughty? What's arrogance? Especially what's to disdain? What do you think about when you think about that imagery? Yeah, you're not just arrogant and kind of a stuck up. You're conceited, and others are just beneath you, right? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Right. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, yeah. And so it's looking at someone and looking down upon them based on material wealth. Um, Proverbs. We've been studying Proverbs, and it just worked out that we started talking about money last Wednesday night, and we'll finish that up. Kind of did a two-parter. Proverbs 28:11. A rich man is wise in his own eyes, but a poor man who has understanding will find him out. And so here's this. How can wealth create that warped view of haughtiness, of disdainment? I mean, gives you power. Yeah. Do what? Okay, it makes you rely on yourself. And so, look what I've done. Look at my achievements, although we're often blinded to the opportunities and privileges and things that were kind of granted to us a lot of times. Yeah, Judd? Mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's a good example. Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy to do that, especially in terms of material um, possessions or wealth. There's not a one of us that probably hasn't at one point looked down upon somebody when we see them, when we see what they have, how they dress, how they look, what kind of car they have, there's probably not a one of us that hasn't at times had a moment where we look down on someone. We judge them based on material possessions. I don't think that's a shock to any of us to think that none of us have not been guilty of that at some point. It's hard not to get caught up in that sometimes, isn't it? Kind of judging the book by the cover, so to speak. Yeah, and then some of you have felt that from other people that looks down upon you and judges you and what you have and what you know and your worth, and based on that. And that is that's one of the temptations and traps that money brings, because it brings, as Maggie said, power, privilege, position, opportunities, means to have things that other people. But am I any better of a person as far as am I even worth my value any worth more than someone who has $1 billion or someone who has $1 to their name? I mean, who am I that I think that I'm better? And so that money and possessions and those things can lure us into thinking. And again, this isn't that working hard and not being lazy, as we talked about in Proverbs even Wednesday, that you are honest and work hard and you can achieve. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, it's that humility and attitude that kind of says, hey, but there by the grace of God, I could have been in that situation. I could have had health, mental, family, whatever situations that often have affected people. I could have been born in the wrong place. What if you were born and raised in Gaza? What if you were born and raised in Israel? What if you were born and raised in Iran? What if you were born and raised in parts of China? What if you were born in... We could start naming off the countries, couldn't we, where... think of what are some other poor countries or especially areas where you think of great poverty and people that have very little? I mean, where? Mexico, okay. It's oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we could start filling up a whiteboard of places, of people who are born in areas that have nothing, they materially, and they struggle and they work and they labor to just put food every day on the table. And so, it's easy to think that, yeah.
I know we're concentrating on money, but there are a lot of other things people could be arrogant about.
Sure.
Countries, Americans are extremely arrogant.
Sure.
And also education and
Mhm.
jobs.
Mhm. Yes.
There are just things that, to a certain extent, may include money, but not
Mhm.
always.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. It often is associated or connected with wealth or possessions, but it doesn't have to be just strictly money. Absolutely, that can produce, we can get that way in the church. We've got the truth, and we know, and we love God, and we worship God every week, and I take the Lord's Supper, and I give, and look how good I am, and we find somebody out there in the world that, like, Judd was talking about, that are sinners, that are not living life, seeking God necessarily that in ways and we can look down upon them. And so, yeah, there's a lot of ways we can do that. And so the key here, he says, don't put your security in wealth. And that's what he's going to really talk about. He says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. When you think about wealth being uncertain, what comes to mind? I mean, it's okay, stock market. What else? I mean, what are examples or things you think about when you think of something, wealth being uncertain? Don't put your hope in it because it's uncertain. Why is it uncertain? How can, yeah.
People that play the lottery.
Okay.
They're hoping that they're going to win the $1 million or whatever the
Yeah.
jackpot is, and then they get it, and they don't know what to do with it, and they blow it.
Yeah, I've always read these studies. Yeah. I've read these studies where people who win $1 million tickets end up a few years later back poor again. Kind of, what else? Think about examples. Don't put your trust in wealth. Why is that? Anything else come to mind? Back in the 80s when the oil boom?
We had some people list against them for dinner, and the man said, well, I sure hope they get such and such well in because I borrowed $100,000 to put in it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, a lot of people have had good jobs, right? Good companies. Go ahead. Yeah, Matt. Sorry, over there. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see another hand. Yeah, Kevin, back here. Yeah, that's good. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you look at a country that has nothing, and yet many of the people that are seeking God are hope-filled with that versus people in very well-off countries like America that are seeking and clinging to anything that they think will give them hope. People can take it, you can lose it, it can be destroyed, it can burn down, it can be flooded. I mean, how many possessions and when it comes to wealth and material things have been taken away, right? That boat, that car, that house, that you just name it. That retirement that people had a couple of years ago before that little thing called the pandemic, right? I mean, people who were a year or two ready to retire, right? Been watching that stock market, and then in some places, what, 30%? I mean, there are people who took upwards of, 30, 40% took losses. I mean, it just, to watch 40 years, right, that you've been acquiring and trying, and then just, so we've seen that time and time again. Don't put your hope in those things. They're not going to give you what you ultimately seek. We talked about that. It's the love of God. And so he says to set, the idea here is to set your hope. And I like that idea. Don't put your hope in anything but God here. And I'd say that proper perspective is what's so important. Don't put it in your job. Don't put it in your health. You don't put it in your kids. I mean, Maggie and I are in that age where we want them now. They're going to start get out and go in the next few years, and we want them to be well and successful. But we're not going to try to put our everything in them. That's their life. They've got to make choices and live, and your kids and grandkids, they've got to live their life. Don't live and put your hope in them, because you know what happens, right? Sometimes with our family. We put our hope and everything in them, and what do they sometimes do to us? They disappoint us. They turn astray. They make choices and things happen to them. And so I'm not saying we don't hurt, our hearts don't break, and we don't, but put your hope in God. Don't, by the way, don't put it in your spouse either. I'm talking about the true hope is only in the Lord. And so that's what we're saying here. It's we can love, we can and have those great relationships and be blessed with them, but don't put your ultimate hope and trust in anyone or anything but God, because the reality is anyone and everyone will at some point in some way eventually let us down, won't they? Your job, your money, your spouse, your kids, your preacher, your elders, your members. Don't put your ultimate hope and trust in anyone but the Lord. And how often have you seen that where people do that and then they get crushed, right? Spiritually. And I'm not saying we don't have consequences and influence. That's not the point I'm making there. Of course we have great influence, and that's why we need to be thinking about how we affect other people. But put it in the Lord, put it in God, and because man will let you down. Material possessions can be lost and taken, and that's contentment is found in godliness. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, loses kids, finances. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Job would be the ultimate. And none of us want that. None of us want to experience that and find out if that is our true hope. But it is what people have often had to face. And so what am I loving? What am I trusting is kind of the key here. Put it in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. And I really like this. God who provides us richly to enjoy. Here's what my question is. Am I enjoying what God gives me? What do often we as Americans seemingly do when it comes to contentment and things we have, and whether it's jobs or possessions, or do we really enjoy? Do you find people out there really just enjoying what they have? What do you often find sometimes? Yeah, that car I got 3 years ago. It doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. I should have got that upgrade. And new phone. What? Are we going to have i100 phones? Look, it was one of the great inventions. But I'm telling you, not much has changed the last few years, because I got wife, I got 3 kids, I got myself. I've been buying those suckers. And I've been looking at it going, okay, yeah, the camera's a little nicer, and I can kind of do this, but what's really upgraded? But boy, people what? Boy, when they get the i13, they're ready for the i14, right? And I got to have the next. What? Hello, some of you just tattled on yourselves, is what you just did. Back at you, some of you. I'm pretty sure it's the 15 now, because I got it, just got it. Oh, no, I don't have it. Yeah, now it's coming out. I hear. I'm telling you, we don't enjoy what we have, do we? For mostly. We're not content. And when you're not content, you can't enjoy nothing. You're just miserable. And we've got the world at our fingers. I can drive down the road here, maybe not exactly in Manford, but in a few miles I'll get into Sand Springs, Tulsa, and I've got the choice of what can I eat? Anything. I want to shop. I want to play. I want to play golf. I want to go to the park. I want to go down Riverside and take a walk. What do I have before me? What do we have? We got everything. And yet people are often what? They're not happy. They're not content. And it's just, do we enjoy? God gives us these things to enjoy. I don't know if I enjoy them. Now maybe I'm working to maintain it, to keep it, and that can rob some of that. And you got to work more hours, and people sometimes have to, to work triple time just to make the boat payment or the house payment and the car payment, and so we maybe can't enjoy it because but I think that's what Paul says here. God wants us to enjoy it, and he gives that to us. Any comments, thoughts on that? Go ahead, Matt. Yeah. Right. Right. And that's what he talks about in the very next statement. So he's going to say, what are you going to do with that wealth? I mean, that's really a big part of that. Yeah, Kathy?
Well, I think sometimes we overlook how many gifts God gives us that we don't even think about.
Right.
Job says, as long as my breath is in me and the breath of
Mhm.
God in my nostrils. And for some reason this year, as I was doing my daily Bible reading, that really stuck out to me, that the air we breathe is the breath of God.
Yeah.
That if it wasn't for God, we wouldn't have oxygen.
Yeah.
We couldn't exist.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we overlook a lot of the very
Yeah.
most basic gifts.
Yeah. You look at this, even just in our solar, you look at the planets and you think the Earth is perfectly suited for us to live on it. I mean, any cooler, any further away from the sun, it's just perfect. God has provided. If he were to take any of it away and just one little thing, we would have no life. We would freeze, we would burn, we couldn't have water. I mean, he provides literally our breath of everything.
And we're just now understanding the purpose of some of the other planets.
Sure.
I read the other day, one of the reasons Jupiter is so important is because its gravity field so large, and it pulls meteorites and things into it that could hurt
Yeah.
the Earth.
Yeah. And if God pulled back just,
And
yeah.
All those things that we don't think about, that a lot of them we haven't even discovered the purpose
Oh,
God
yeah.
had for.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like with Job, as Jeff said, where the Lord says to Job, you can't understand the mysteries of the universe and life. How, and so, yeah. So look what he says here. Let's keep going. Now he says, don't put your hope and wealth, put it in God, who gives us these things to enjoy. Now we get the command. Now we're told what to do with it. He says, command them to do good and to be rich in good deeds and to be generous and willing to share. And so, and this is what we're going to talk about Wednesday a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of skim on this. But what do I do with my wealth? What do I do with my possessions? What do I do with what God has blessed me with? Am I full of good works? Am I full of good deeds? Am I taking what God has given me? And again, it doesn't matter if you've got $1 million in the bank account or whatever you've got, whether you've got a brand new $100,000 work truck or you've got a beat up, just a farm truck. What am I doing with what God's given me and blessed me with? Am I full of good and good works? And he says, this is what, don't be minimum waged. with good works. That is, what's the very what? Minimum I got to do. You ever worked with somebody that way? Oh, well, we're not supposed to do that. I'm not paid to do that. You ever had that? Well, buddy, we can sit here and look at that all day and say, I'm not supposed to really do that, or we can get the job done. We're not the minimal. Well, what about with good works? Do we just the minimal? And we have that attitude where Paul here says to Timothy, you command those who are rich to do good and to be rich. Notice that contrast. They've got wealth materially, right? They're rich that way, but they need to be rich in using that for good. And I got to tell you, I have been, members of the church. I mean, as a minister and our leadership, sometimes we get privy to things that it just overwhelms me when I have seen the generosity of members of the church. And I mean, whether they've got huge bank accounts or whatever, the blessings, the gifts, the generosity over the years, whether it's people in need or helping kids or the roof literally needs to be replaced or whatever, a family, and somebody comes up and privately says, I want to take care of that. I don't want anybody knowing about it. I've just been in ministry just blown away by the generosity of members. And so I am so thankful for members who have been rich in good works and good deeds. And not just in donating money, but in everything. And I know that's the case here. I know we've got members and over the years that have been generous in their donations and their time, their resources, and how our church has been blessed right here in Manford, no doubt, because of that. And that's just talking about that. And you think about other people that they might be blessing that we have no idea what they're doing. But he says, you command them to do good, to be rich, to be generous, and to be willing to share. You read that description in the early church, that they were willing to share. Hebrews 13 and verse 16. Hebrews 13 and verse 16. Get over there. I flipped the wrong direction. Needed to go towards the end of the New Testament. Do not forget. I mean, when you read statements like "don't forget" in the Bible, that's kind of what? That's important. Do you ever say that to someone? No, don't forget. Now, I've been guilty. Maggie is sitting back here. She'll tell you. She's not going to. She's not going to speak up and tell you. But don't forget to run by the... Oh, I just hate it when I forget. But, you got to give reminders like that. Don't forget. And so when you see in Scripture these don't forget, I thought one time, years ago, I used to put little things in a file. I'd call it sermon garden ideas. And I'd have things I think, that'd make for a good sermon. Maybe something I saw or read or an idea, and I'd put it in there and then have that little file. And when I was kind of wanting to preach something kind of just different or interesting. And I did think about that. What if you took these don't forget statements? That'd be a pretty good little sermon series. All the do not forget statements, right? I mean, that'd be interesting if we spent 10, 12 weeks just looking at some of the do not forget statements. This is a big one. Don't forget to what? To share and do good with what you have. Remember Ephesians 4? We mentioned this Wednesday night. Command those who steal to steal no longer, to work with their hands so that they might be able to what? Share with those who what? Who have need. And so that's a great purpose of not just taking care of our families and that responsibility, but also to do good and opportunities. And then lastly here, because I told you we're finishing, don't think that 5-minute bell ain't going to scare me one bit. Let me tell you what. Look at here. Yeah. Now, let's see here. It's 10:10. I got it. Look here. Look what he finishes with, verse 19. Here's the reason. He says, you need to, in this way, lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. So there's a couple of things here. He says that Lay up for yourselves treasures. Of course, you think immediately of who? When you hear that language of lay up treasures, what? Jesus said what? Don't lay up what? For earth. Yeah, we talked about it. It can be here today and gone tomorrow. He says, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Paul, echoing the words of Jesus, says, you lay up a treasure for themselves as a firm foundation. And notice notice the contrast. He started with the who are rich in this what? Present age. But there is another age coming. Do you understand what I'm saying? This life is not all there is to it. There is a what coming? Another age. And that age will be the final. That will be eternity. And it will, okay, we work, we live, we exercise, we take care of ourselves. Maybe we live to, I don't know, maybe we live 80, 85, 90, maybe 100 years old. Okay, great. Compare that to eternity. What do we focus on? Do we focus on this life? Is that all of our focus and attention? Yeah, we have to work. We got to take care of our families. We can enjoy this life. But he says, don't forget to lay up for yourselves this firm foundation for the coming age. And then I love what he describes. Take hold of life that is true life. You say, wait a minute, I thought this was life. Yeah, but there is a true life to come. This is temporary. The life God intended for us to live, as in the Garden of Eden, that was destroyed or that we lost, God is coming again in Jesus to create that new heaven and new earth, and that will be our eternal dwelling. That is the life that we need to be focused on. Eternity, kind of like we say, what? Eternity matters. This is up here on our board, right? This is what it's about. This life is not what it's all about, ultimately. How about the rich man and Lazarus? Do you think the rich man realized that when he woke up in torments? Because in this life, he had what? He had everything. But he didn't have what? He actually didn't have everything. There was one little thing he didn't have. One small little detail. He didn't have what? Who? He didn't have God. And what does Jesus even say? What does it profit? And he uses hyperbole, exaggeration. The world, he uses the word world, means everything in the world. It's an absurdity, is what it is. If you got everything in this life, everything, but what? You lose your soul, you profit what? Nothing. Nothing. And so Paul here says, echoing the rest of Scripture, is you make sure that your focus is on that which is eternal for the coming age, and take hold of that life. That's real life. The life there, the world is hustling and bustling, and tomorrow morning they're going to be blaring down the highway to get to downtown or wherever they're going to work, and wherever jobs and ball games and sports and golf and fishing and hunting, now that we're in hunting season, and football, they're going to be going and watching football again in a few days on Saturday, and today they're going to watch football and Sunday. All of that stuff, that is not the real true life. It's fading, and this is what we're living for, this life to come. Do what? No, yeah, because it's going to disappoint us. Yeah, it's going to disappoint us, right? And so he says, this is how he ends by saying, you focus on that which is going to last. And so, he finishes there with just the final words about Timothy and reminds Timothy who he is, that his life is to honor God, and guard what you've been entrusted. And again, don't be turned into that worldly, godless chatter, and it's not knowledge, and which people are professing, and again, departing from the faith. Kind of ends on a negative there, but you hold on to the gospel, which is eternal. All right, I told you, one way or another, we're going to finish, and there it is, 1 Timothy.
Let every heart